larger circle. I want to give an idea why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I see my own work. And hopefully this is interesting for you who are either considering doing artistic expressions by yourself, or if you're interested in understanding what motivations have people to do stuff. Because I think if you ask 5 different artists about why they do what they do and how they create, what's their process, you will get 5 different answers at least. This year is obviously art. Pretty much everyone knows what this is, and it's something which is very always. There's almost feedback. So can you make it a little bit less loud? Less loud? Yeah, there's almost feedback. Because I can't change it here. Okay. And so that's very clear. That has no function. This is a painting, and it makes sense in a museum. It makes sense to look at, and there's no question about this. There's also no question about this one. This is a PDP-8 computer from the late 70s, and this has nothing to do with art. This is engineering. This is just a stupid computer. But if you look at it, how it's actually designed, just from a designer perspective, there's symmetry. There's a choice of colors. There's a choice of shapes. You could build this machine and it could look really ugly. In my opinion, this machine doesn't look ugly. It looks very much like a science fiction idea from the 70s. And it conveys a lot of desires. It conveys ideas. It conveys hopes for an exciting future. And it's all encoded in the appearance. So this is as much a piece of engineering as it is a piece of art, because someone, and the funny thing is, we probably don't know who it was, someone made these decisions. Someone at some point had either a computer in front of him or her, or a piece of paper, and was designing this. And it's also beautiful on the inside, as in terms of software engineering or software architecture. When you talk about a larger software project, you talk about software architecture. And this not only implies that there's function involved, but also that you think about putting blocks of things together in a meaningful way, with streets in between, with passages. You decide about which block is where. And again, there is artistic decisions involved. In my own practice, I have a background of engineering. I come from a family of engineers. Everyone worked for Siemens or something like this. And it was never considered that anyone in our family is becoming an artist. And so my way to sneak in artistic expression was by finding ways to combine engineering with artistic expression. So I figured out that there's something which is called electronic music, and that there's something which is called sound engineering. And I studied sound engineering, and I studied computer science, and I used my knowledge of the technical side, for instance, to build my own hardware for my live performances. What you see on this photo is a MIDI controller. It's a very specific MIDI controller for my monoleg live performances from 2005 to maybe 2010. I used it for 5 years. And I built it according to the same aesthetic ideas which I felt are radiated in machines like this, or also which are present in some of the really beautiful synthesizers I'm happy to use, where I feel the person behind the machine. You look at a piece of hardware, a piece of engineering, and it is more than just a function. It is the personality of the person who made it. Great examples can always be found in architecture, where obviously the function is one thing, but the look of it is equally important. If it doesn't work as a function, then you don't go in a building. But if it looks ugly, it's no fun to be in it also. And for me, building my own jewels was always a very important part of my artistic expression, because I believe I create more interesting results if I work with machines I like. It is similar to being in a venue I like. The reason why I think concert yesterday was really excellent was that for the first moment when I came into this building, I felt what I can offer and what this building tells me can match. I felt the building and my concept of what I want to do talk to each other in a way. And this made it possible. If the space would be different, it would be much harder for me to come up with great ideas. And this piece of hardware was something I spent a lot of time with. And in the making of this machine, I was full of doubt. I was full of doubt because it takes a lot of time and effort to build something like this. Here's a look at the inside while I was making it. It took me almost half a year, and other colleagues would have done 12 inches at this time, or an album.
And I didn't do any music at this time. I was just trying to get this box to be finished. And I thought maybe this is the wrong thing to do as an artist, to spend my time with building stuff. But afterwards, this thing here changed my performances very, very radically. Much more radical than I thought. This thing was never meant to be a replacement for my computer screen. It was always meant to be a replacement for the mouse. I didn't want to use a mouse anymore on stage. But I thought I built this box and then I have a big computer screen behind it. And what you see on the top part here, all these buttons, if you're familiar with Ableton Live, this is the clip matrix. And this was the first MIDI controller ever on this planet to allow to control the clip matrix. The Akai APC40 came 3 years later. And I just noticed that I don't need to look at the screen anymore. And this meant I had no computer on stage. I had just this quite large box. This thing is like this. And that was it. And it changed the way how I could look at the people while performing. And so, in retrospective, I think even if it was a lot of work, it paid off. I do my own max patches for my projects, simply because they allow me to do things which I couldn't do with commercial software. This is a max patch for an installation, which is this one here. This has been shown at a festival in Belgrade a few years ago. And the idea is I wanted to create a interactive machine which allows people who have no idea about music and sound to play with it. And I was always amazed by this button matrix from those Monome people who built this button matrix, which is in there. Because it's so abstract. And because it's so abstract, it's so inviting. And I built this max patch here, which creates some sound events according to what people do with those buttons. And in a way, of course, here you have also the theme that even if this is not a audiovisual installation, it's a sound installation, it has a visual component. It has this box. And so I was thinking about this box. And here is another thing. This here is an interface for a sound specialization system which we have at the University of Arts in Berlin. This is this ring of speakers here. And this ring of speakers, a so-called wave field synthesis array, can be controlled using some max patches which I wrote together with the students. to allow to move sound sources around in space. And this is the graphical representation of it. And what I found interesting is that I only made this graphical representation as an information display. I had no intention to do something which looks cool. I just wanted it to work as a function. But then it turned out that it's really fascinating to look at it while you hear the sounds. And so I made a piece which is also somewhere on my website. Unfortunately, there's no internet here, so I can't show it to you. But I made a piece where the visual representation is an important part of the piece too. So what happened in my career is that I step by step, more by accident, moved from doing just Berlin techno and drone ambient stuff to audiovisual things, simply because there was always a visual component involved. There is one more project I'd like to talk about. This is something which I made in, I think, 2003, it's up there. This is a very simple interface, what you see here on the screen, and this interface is during a performance projected behind the performer. And this thing involves two performers, me and at this time Deadbeat, who was at this time still in Montreal, and we were performing together via the internet. Sounds a bit odd these days. In 2003 this was still a big deal. What this is a very simple sequencer, basically a drum computer to perform together online. And the fun comes from the fact that you see the color coding. There's Deadbeat in pink and Monolake in blue. And I can draw steps, so I can basically define a rhythmical pattern, and Scott can define a rhythmical pattern. And it's completely transparent for the audience who does what, because you see my mouse pointer here, and you see that suddenly pink dots arrive, and you know who is doing it. And there is no hidden layer, nothing. Everything which people do is completely transparent. And if you think about 2003, this was the time where people started having just laptops on stage. So there was this discussion of, oh, these guys are just checking emails on stage. And this was basically the very opposite. There was also the laptop on stage, but everything was as open and as clear as it can be. And we had a concert. Unfortunately, I forgot where it was. It was in Italy, that's for sure. And it was a very harsh night with lots of noise and lots of digital artists doing really hardcore stuff. And I was the last one to play with Scott. And I thought maybe it's time to make a nice slow ending of the night. So Scott and me made this very slow dubby thing going on there. And there's one thing which I didn't tell you yet. Here on the top is a little chat window. So I can type in things here, and the people see that I type in things. And Scott can answer, and if Scott answers, then you see it down here. So there's a little, basically, before Skype was Skype, no, I think Skype was there, but there's a chat involved. So all the communication between me and Scott on the other side of the Atlantic is visible for the audience. So we started playing, and some person at some point put a piece of paper on stage, and on this piece of paper there was written, "Can you play harder?" And I wrote to Scott, "Scott, we are supposed to play harder." And what happens next was that you saw at the bass drum everything getting pink, because Scott was just simply drawing 16th notes on the bass drum, and it got da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And everyone was laughing because you could already see what's coming, and then we started fighting with each other who gets more dots on the screen. And it was a fantastic piece of interaction and really beautiful. So I liked this a lot, but the problem was this is something which is fun for maybe 15, 20 minutes. This is nothing where you can do a 1-hour concert. And for some reason I thought it's important to make a 1-hour concert, you know, the usual length for a live set. So I thought it needs to be more complicated. And I built lots of iterations of this sequencer. This is another one. I built many more versions of it. And the more complex those sequences became, the less clear it became for the audience what's going on, and the less interesting it became. So by making it more complex, I achieved the opposite. And at some point, I simply didn't feel like doing this project anymore. And if I look back at this now, I think we just should have stayed with the 20 minutes. So sometimes the ability to do something technically is also a difficult challenge, because you can change things instead of saying, okay, I accept how it is. One nice detail of this software was, this is how it's supposed to look, but while programming it, I made a few mistakes, and suddenly I got pictures like that. But you can still click on those buttons. So this is still completely functional. It's just completely messed up visually. And we made this part of the performance, that at the end of the performance, the sequencer basically falls apart graphically. And again, this is something where the visual side becomes more abstract, more important, and is another sign that there's some interest here for me, which was under the surface about doing visual things. I don't know how much time we have, actually. How long are we supposed to talk here? Because I can talk for hours, and I don't. So, let me think. I just go through all this, and if you're bored, then we stop. Another topic of interest of mine always has been space. I love reverbs. I can spend long hours of my day to listen to different reverbs and figure out what kind of reverb sounds great. I like how rooms sound. And I always had a lot of fun doing concerts or sound installations at places which sound difficult. When someone tells me, oh, we have a space, but it's really difficult sound-wise, I'm actually starting to get interested, because difficult usually means the space sounds interesting in some way, and it's just a question of what you do in it. In Berlin there is a former water reservoir, and this is a photo of it. It's a set of rings. It looks like it's under a small hill in Prenzlauer Berg, and it's just concentric rings. And it has been used as a water reservoir for 10 years in the early 20th century, and afterwards the city decided to not use it anymore, and it was empty. And it's a huge space. You cannot do anything meaningful in this space. It has no windows, it is cold, it is dark, it is wet. It's really unpleasant. But it sounds amazing. It doesn't sound like reverb, it doesn't sound like delays, it sounds like a strange mix of reverbs connected with delay lines. You shout in one of those rings and you get a fantastic diffused echo back. Or you hear people talking which are on the other side of the rings, and then you move 5 meters and they don't hear them anymore. Very fascinating. I was asked to do a sound piece in there, and my first idea was I place a lot of small speakers, and I use the fact that pretty much wherever you are, you never hear all these speakers. You always hear this big mess of mixed, diffused sounds. We figured out that just the cables for this suggestion would cost far more than the budget we have, because it's all these circles, and if you just put all these speaker cables there, it's already quite expensive. So I ended up, and we gave up with this project, and I ended up doing something with only 6 speakers and a subwoofer. And the great thing about this space is, this is where the speakers were located. You had sound, equal amounts of sound everywhere in those rings, really everywhere, with just those 6 speakers. And this was the result of carefully trying to find out what I can do with this room and to find the right placement and the right sounds. And now I don't know why I'm ending here. Escape maybe. Well, no. And basically the sound just travels around those circles and creates fantastic things. Here's another photo of it. We tried to make a recording of this piece. It's a similar problem with my laser piece. There are some things which you simply cannot put in a different medium. The beauty of the sound in this water reservoir is because of all the different directions where it comes from. And if you try to get a recording, it just never captures it. It's like if you try to record the ocean with a stereo microphone. It's kind of sounds like the ocean, but it's not nearly the experience if you close your eyes when you're on the beach. So we made this documentation but it has nothing to do with the real thing. And now I finally come to projects which are more related to what you saw yesterday. I'm interested in lasers since I was a little boy. I just, as everyone who is interested in technology, I found it amazing that you can have this extremely bright and precise, sharp beam of light. And I made some experiments with a really, really cheap, small red laser, which was at this time, maybe I have a photo, this one here. This was the equivalent of a €1 laser pointer, but it needed high voltage and a lot of circuits around to work. And you couldn't do very much with that. And at some point, a few years ago, it just came to my mind that I could actually really start working with lasers because I'm in a different position now. I am able to invest a little bit money and time to actually try something out. So I just thought, why shouldn't I just start trying it? And I was in contact with a very small gallery in New York who was interested in doing a piece. And at this time, I thought I'd do a really, really small piece. The gallery is, it's size of a small kitchen. So it's really an underground gallery. And I thought I use one small laser and one loudspeaker and create something. I didn't know what I wanted to create. I just thought this is a good idea to start. What I knew was that there's a lot of things which I have seen with lasers which are not what I wanted to do. So none of those things were the things I was interested in. And I had this strong idea that there must be a possibility to work with lasers and to do something different. So maybe something like this. Of course not. And I started to work, and maybe I get a little bit into technical things now. Because working with lasers is quite a challenge. And it's a challenge because the medium is very limited. There's a reason why a lot of things look the same. These are the things which are easy to do. This one is a particularly interesting example. You don't see any sharp corner here. You don't see any precise line. It's a very sloppy drawing. It's just like a shitty hand drawing. And you see even that the red here and the green do not really match very well. This is because in order to draw precise, let's say, rectangular shapes with a laser, you need a very precise laser system and you need to invest a lot of thinking in how you do it. And this is so difficult to achieve because basically laser is light. And the only way to draw with a laser is you have to change the path of light with mirrors. You cannot think in pixels. You cannot think in some super fast megahertz way of adjusting the light. You have to mechanically move mirrors. There's no way around it. And you have to turn on and off the lasers to get, if you want to have a single dot somewhere, or a lot of dots, one single dot is easy, it's just a laser pointer. But if you want to have a cloud of dots, what you have to do is You move the mirrors to one point, and you turn on the laser, and turn off the laser. You move the mirror to a different point. You turn it on, you turn it off, you move. And if you want to see 50 points, that means you have to do this 50 times per frame. If you want to have a flicker-free image, you need to do it at least 30 times a second. So that means you need to draw 150 of those dots per second. No, it's too little. I think 1,500 dots. This means you have to move these little mirrors really precise. This is how an industrial laser module looks like. And this is how those mirrors look like. The size of these two mirrors is like this. It's 3 millimeters to 6 millimeters. And so this is the two mirrors, and these are the magnetic motors in a way, which are needed to control those mirrors. And if a mirror is only shifted by a fraction of a degree, it doesn't work anymore. So this is what makes this a little bit difficult and expensive, and this is what limits the things I can do. And I found those limitations interesting, because if you have limitations, you need to really think which of the things you could do are the ones which are the most interesting one. And I started to experiment. And it's a longer story how I actually managed to get in touch with the laser company who is helping me to do what I need to do, because those lasers are far more expensive than what I thought they are, and I simply cannot afford to buy one. So I'm renting them, and if I want to test things, I go to the company and test things. This is a photo which, for me, historically is very important. This is it's on the first day of my life where I was working with lasers. And it's a photo which shows that some of the ideas I had did work, and other ideas didn't. What I wanted to draw was just the circles. What I did draw was some circles which are half finished and a lot of lines in between. So the lines in between are because I didn't manage to turn on and off the laser beam correctly, and the half-finished circles are a result of my attempt to draw faster than the mirrors can draw. So this was supposed to be just a random collection of dots. And this is another interesting example from a few days later. For those of you who are working with sound, since controlling the mirrors is an analog thing to do, basically you apply a control voltage for the movement. So you say 0 volt is the center, minus 5 volt is minus 60 degrees, plus 5 volt is 60 degrees. So if you want to draw a line, you apply a sine wave to one of the mirrors very fast, and the mirror moves back and forth, and you get a line. What you see here is a complex set of rectangular waves, which would simply create those horizontal and vertical lines. But what you also see is those spirals. And those spirals are the result of low-pass filtering with a resonant low-pass filter. So this is the visual equivalent to a resonating low-pass filter. And this is, of course, for someone who comes from audio, very interesting to see that there's some concepts of audio which can be transformed into meaningful visual shapes. This is a later example where I got already a little bit more familiar with how to control the lasers. The circular shapes are the things I wanted to draw. The thin lines are the paths of light which the laser needs to take in order to go from one shape to the other. And this is where you would usually turn the laser off, because this is the the necessary connection lines which you don't want. But as you can see in this example, the connection lines have their very own beauty, because they basically tell the story of how get the mirrors from A to B. And I find this very interesting. This is a specific side effect of the medium. So this is a color in a literal sense, no, in a figurative sense of the medium. This is specific to laser. With video, you would never get this. And I embrace this idea. So I work with a limited medium, and then I look what happens with the limitations and why are the limitations cool. It's a little bit like if you nowadays listen to 8-bit samples, it sounds fantastic. Because 8-bit samples are really have their own quality. A quick thing, I just noticed, Christian, with the hand thingy, I removed my ring and I don't find my ring anymore. Sorry, I made this, I need to check something. I just noticed I lost something which is really precious for me. And I want to just check if I have it in my bag. Sorry. I lost my ring, and this ring is, well, it's important for me. But now I have it back. Sorry. So, yeah, so I like the, I thought I left it on the street, you know. Like so I try to use the artifacts of the medium. This here is a nice picture because it's a lie. This is a long-term exposure of using one single laser in a larger room. And I used this picture to convince a gallery in France to show my laser work. And it worked. So sometimes you have to exaggerate a little bit to achieve something. It's a longer story how I came to this gallery in France, but the point is I was pretending that I can do things which at this time I couldn't do. I was just brave enough to say, okay, it somehow will work. And I proposed things, and once they said, yes, we want it, I really started working on it. It's a way of working I noticed from a lot of artists who do large-scale projects. In order to get funding for a large-scale project, you pretend that you know what you're doing, and you just hope it works out, because without trying it, you never really do know. So you need to get at some point a good idea how much of what you say you can do, you actually can do. Sometimes it implies that you work non-stop for days and nights before the deadline because you notice it's more difficult than you were thinking. This is here where I rented a rehearsal space. I don't have such a space. My studio is very, very small. I rented this space to work on my first laser installation. And then at some point I was happy with it, and I invited a few friends as a test audience. And I think they were happy too. And this is how it then finally looked in France at the gallery. And I'm very happy to say that this piece is just next month shown again, and again in France. I don't know, France and lasers, this seems to work very well. And well, this was my step into really doing something significant as a audiovisual artist and not just as a sound person. And so when I did this, a few people asked me, so when do you do concerts with lasers? And my answer was, well, that's really a different story, because they're expensive. It takes time to set it up. There's a lot of safety regulations, and I don't have an idea what to do with lasers in a concert, so I don't do it. But you know, if 10 people come to you with the same idea, you start thinking. And at some point I thought, okay, why not? And this is how I started with the Lumiere project. Another reason why I started it was that I felt the more I'm interested in doing visual things by myself, the more it becomes a strange situation that, for instance, for the Monolake live shows, I work with an external VJ or visual art person, because either I do my own things or I do something else with someone else, but it didn't make so much sense anymore to do music with an external VJ or visual artist. And therefore I decided, okay, I know how to make music, I know how to work with the lasers, so it shouldn't be a big deal to do an audiovisual concert with lasers. And it was a big deal, and it still is a big deal, because I think I never in my life underestimated the effort for something so much. It turned out to be a project which became much, much more difficult than I thought. And the reason for this is, and now I jump a lot and come back to it later, that I figured out that in order to make Lumiere, I need to start from very basic conceptual things first. I need to understand what I actually want to do. Because what I didn't want to do is, I don't want to have a concert which is kind of a Monolake concert with a laser show. I didn't want people to perceive, okay, there's this techno artist who has a laser show now. I wanted to do something where the visual side is meaningful, whatever meaningful means, but not arbitrary. I wanted to do something where if I turn the lasers off, the concert is over and not, well, the visuals are gone. So I had a very different idea. And I figured out that what I actually need to do is I need to develop a language. And this is something which I didn't even see at the beginning. I was just starting, because sometimes I just try things out and afterwards I think, what is it what I'm doing? So it took me almost a year to understand what I'm actually doing there. And how I understand it now is that Lumiere for me is an exploration of an audiovisual language. And if I think about it as a language, then I can say that the letters are the basic shapes I can draw. The software I wrote basically can draw shapes, a square, circle, a letter, etc., etc. And then I have ways to articulate those shapes. I can say, okay, I want the shape to become smaller or larger over time. I want the shape to change color, to become a noisy outline, and so on and so on. And this is pretty much how I get expression into what I'm doing. So there's the shape, which is circle, which is not so exciting, but if I move the circle and change the brightness, you get these strange after images and all these fascinating things happen. And this is a nice effect then, because it has some textural quality, but it still needs something more to work as in a larger context. So I create words by layering shapes or by having successions of shapes. So small blocks of which are meaningful for me in a way. And then, of course, I try on a larger scale to figure out how I can combine those small gestures into larger blocks. And I'm not nearly at the end with this project. I have a lot of ideas how this project should look like in 5 years. But there's, first of all, a big challenge for me is I can only test this project when I have the lasers and when I have the space. There is unfortunately no way to really prototype this on a computer screen. I can prototype a little bit. I can show you something here. This here is the current max patch which I created for drawing the shapes. And so you see on the scope here that it works kind of, but if I draw a more complex shape, this looks very different when I draw it with the lasers than it looks here. And what I cannot do is, of course, anything which has to do with brightness. So all the things which deal with manipulation of color and brightness and black versus very bright, I can't see here. So this is a very limited window into something which I can only test when I have the lasers. And this means I need to think a lot on paper, and then I need to have a very small condensed time where I work on it with the lasers, and then I go back thinking. And this means the process is much smaller than the process I'm used to when working with audio. When I want to make a piece, I go in my little studio and work on it. With the laser show, I cannot do it like this. I need to work in a very different way, and this is something I need to get used to. Oops. So I figured that what I want to use is basically 3 different types of letters. I want to have static things, which is basically a figure which is there. I want to have percussive elements, which are basically shapes which suddenly appear and disappear, or shapes which change the shape and drastically, like a circle which expands or a circle which closes down, which is for me really the visual equivalent to a percussion sound. And then there's textural shapes. These are the ones which are standing slowly and changing. And I want to be able to articulate those in real time. So there's all kinds of faders and during my performance, which allows me to change how things are articulated. I didn't really have a good idea what to do sonically, or what role sound actually plays in this project. I knew that I wanted sound with it, of course, but I also knew that I didn't want to have the sound being too important to avoid this kind of sound plus lasers. And so I came up with a conceptual idea where I said, I want to have sounds which are extremely in sync with the lasers. And these sounds are generated with a similar max patch than what actually creates the laser shapes. And they are controlled exactly with the same signals. So when I send the command circle to the laser, this command is interpreted by the synthesizer as something which draws the circle sound, which creates the circle sound. So there's 100% match between what you hear and what you see, and I found this very important. Then there's percussive sounds like the bass drums and occasional hi-hats, which are obviously not from the lasers, but different, to be complementary and maybe can form a counterpoint or some polyrhythmical audiovisual things. And then there's obviously textural sounds because, well, I like them. Oops. Blah. Yeah, reserve battery power. Yeah. Okay. Do you still see this? Yeah. Ja. Kannst du mal gucken? Technically, what I'm doing there is there's a Ableton Live set, which, danke dir.
Theoretisch.
Herr Losert? Now it is. Haha. So. Jesus. Ich habe doch gerade hier. Da war. Ja. Okay, it works like this. If I hold it like that. Yeah. Okay, that's good. So there's an Ableton Live set which contains MIDI notes, and the MIDI notes are going into a Max for Live device, and this Max for Live device sends out texts to the laser computers. And each MIDI note creates a text. So I have a text editor where I can say, okay, this MIDI note sends out a text called circle. Then I play this MIDI note and I get a circle. So it's very simple in a way. And then I have this large max patch here, which is constantly growing, which actually is the laser drawing engine. And this is a new one which I'm currently working on because I was a bit frustrated with the limitations of the current one. The reason why you didn't see, for instance, those nice octagons moving around yesterday was it's not finished yet. So what you see here is really a work in progress. I don't want to go through this in detail, but for those of you who are Max geeks, this is basically all codebox in Gen. It's actually, every detail is very simple. That's the funny thing. I try to do complex things with simple ideas, and lasers are perfect for this because you can only do simple things and you need to combine them in interesting ways. So if I want to move a shape, it basically means I have an offset which I need to change over time. And every detail here is just a few lines of code. And the combination of those few lines of code at the end make it possible to draw complex things, like this one here. I give you an idea about the text input. So if I simply send circle, it draws a circle. If I want to have a circle of a different size, I add a size command. If I want to have the circle changing over time, I have the start time, the start size, the end size, and a time value. That's it. So if I bind this command to a MIDI node, then a MIDI node basically, every time I send the MIDI node, this happens. If I want to have an LFO, here's the LFO. And here you see all these parameters. These are the things which I have on faders. So I can say during the performance, let's make it all slower, or very fast, or with more amount. And this is what I can really play. So this is where, for me, the fun comes with performing, because I can perform this. It's nothing which is completely pre-rendered. I can make mistakes, I can make articulation. And yesterday I had such a great time because I noticed that the audience was reacting, and I could react to the audience, and the audience was reacting. And this created this feeling of something special is happening right now. And I couldn't do this if it's all pre-programmed. And a more complex shape would be something like that, or this, or these ones here. The lines which connect the circles, these are the lines which would be turned, where the laser is actually turned off. So what you see here is an abstraction of that. So you would, with the lasers, you would just see the 4 circles changing. That's why it's not so much going on here. And it's too fast. Slower, slower, slower. Oh well. Yeah, you see this. I wish I brought the laser, but I thought it's too much effort. Then we could compare how this looks versus how it looks on the laser. So that's principle, in principle how it works. And that's a good question. Did I change something? Maybe not. I hope. And so that's in a. Hold on. Go back. So that's a bit how this works and how I plan to evolve it in the future. There is something which I figured out recently, and this has to do with the fact that I'm still not satisfied with Lumiere. And I'm still not satisfied because yesterday was an exception. Yesterday worked extremely well. But usually my problem is I try to control too many things at the same time live. And I only have one brain and a few fingers. And I cannot achieve the precision and the clarity of expression and the vividness and all these things at the same time. I would like to be able to have much more precise things going on, much more precise dramatic changes than what I'm doing now. And I just noticed that I cannot do this if I improvise. So I will go in the very other direction, and I will make a new version of Lumiere, which I will premiere next year. And this version will be very, very pre-programmed with tons of details. So I try to go in the very, very other extreme and say I give up mostly on live performance, and I try to provide the most complex, most detailed thing I can do with the lasers. So where every movement is planned before, but also which means every movement can have a very specific sound assigned to it. And I need to try this out, and then I can see how this works, and then I see how the current version works, and then I guess at some point I find a mix in between. But I can only find the mix in between if I go to the other extreme first. So I need to try the extremes to mark the possible area in which I can move. And it's a lot of work, and the new laser generator is part of that. And well, I have no idea how it's really going to end. It's just that it's still a lot of fun to do all this because it's so difficult. It's a challenge. So a few last words, and then we should maybe enter a discussion if possible. Yeah, this is just a photo from a performance in New York. And there you can see basically this live set which is controlling it all. And here's MIDI faders where I use, here's MIDI faders, oops. So here's faders, and here's knobs for controlling what's going on. And you can see that I'm moving those faders and looking at the screen. So I really move those faders and see what happens. And this is a reason actually why I'm not performing on stage. I need to see what's happening. Because some of the most amazing effects are not the programmed effects, but what your eyes are doing. I make a circle smaller and larger, and suddenly you have this after image. I need to see the after image from the audience perspective to get it right. If I would see it on stage with a small mirror, which I tried at the beginning, it wouldn't work. Doing Lumiere shows involves a lot of planning and a lot of drawing of plannings and stuff. And this photo is of particular fun because the photo, the print on the very left side should look familiar to you. This is 3-month or 4-month old. So you see, this is the place where it was yesterday. And these are other places which are going to come. And the red things are things which don't work. So, and Christian, who is sitting here and who is touring with me and is my assistant, he's doing all this paperwork all the time. Without him, I couldn't do this. So, as a last image or a last project description, what I'm doing is I try also to do something very different with a laser. And I came to it by accident. What I do with Lumiere and the other installations is I work on the precision of what I'm doing. So there's this laser beams and the mirrors, and I do a lot of coding to get it really precise and to rule out randomness and all these things. And my original idea was I perform Lumiere on stage. And the lasers are dangerous because with the lasers I'm using, if I have a steady beam, I can lit up a cigarette. Imagine this on your eyeball. You don't want to. So I put a piece of plexiglass in front of me. Yeah. Yeah, but now well maybe maybe leave it. No, since we have it, we need to use it. Yeah, thank you so much. Oh, I don't need it. No. So I put this piece of plexiglass in front of me just to protect myself. And, you know, protection things you have to test. So I put the laser with full energy on the plexiglass, and the plexiglass did melt. And the melting of the plexiglass created something like this as a reflection on the wall. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, this is great. And I experimented further and turned it into an installation where a large piece of plexiglass is slowly scanned by a very powerful laser and is melting and is making those shapes. And since Lumiere is so much about basically white lasers, I used a very colorful laser for this. And these are a few of the results. Unfortunately, I don't have a video, but I have a few more photos on my messy desk. No. Folder. Yes. So what you see on the right side, this is the laser, and the laser hits this piece of plexiglass here, and it's bent because the heat of the laser completely bent the whole plexiglass, which I didn't anticipate. And this is the reflection which comes back. And can I just go further? Maybe I need to select them all. Yes. So this is a view from the other perspective. So you see the laser on the left side and the laser beam hitting the plexiglass. And here's the reflection. Another one. And this is how it looked on the wall. And here is another one, which is very spectacular. At the end of the installation, I had it for 2 days there. I made a small concert. And the idea of the concert was just to create more destruction than during the installation. So I turned the laser all the way up, and it shoots holes through the plexiglass. So what you see here is that at some point, it just draws a hole through the plexiglass, and then you get this fantastic, very fast changing outlines of light on the opposite wall. This is something which I did never expect to turn out so well. So sometimes accidents are much better than what you plan. And so that was afterwards Mr. Henke is explaining what's going on. I was teaching for 4 years, so it never stops. So this is what I wanted to show you, and if you have questions or comments, then
did you try with glass, the laser through glasses?
I tried, but nothing came out which I didn't. Which I found interesting at the moment. What I wanted to try at some point is, with Lumiere I have the one projection screen, and now I have also fog, which is great, but I thought of having small semi-transparent projection screens everywhere in the room, so that basically the laser goes through layers of projections. But I never really did, but this is an idea I still have.
And there's a specific process to interact, music, make the music interact with video directly, or you do separately?
I do it. It's really the same process.
Maybe you already thought, but I didn't get this.
Yeah, I can show it actually. Kind of. Let's see how much this works. see how we can get this with this screen resolution. So let's get rid of the mixer too. Oh. Yeah, I understand this. Just get rid of the mixer here. So what you see here structurally is on these are the 4 audio tracks which create the percussive sounds which have technically nothing to do with the lasers. This is a track which creates the atmospherical sounds, and these are L1 till L3. These are 3 tracks which contain nodes to drive the lasers. Yesterday I was using 4 lasers, but the smallest version of Lumiere works with 3 lasers. And if I have 4 lasers, then the one which is in the center is doubled with a controllable variation. So what this means is, for instance, if I draw a single circle and the variation is set to 0, then 2 lasers draw the same circle, so it's just more bright. If there's variation, it's larger or smaller, the movements are slower or faster. So it's an easy way to, in a larger space, get more complex shapes without thinking too much. Or if I draw random lines, then I suddenly have, if I draw 8 random lines and I have 4 lasers, then the center laser draws 16 lines because the random is different each time. So basically, here is MIDI nodes for the sounds, and here is a MIDI node. Well, the first track it's a bit boring. So these 2 MIDI nodes here, they trigger a shape, and the shapes are stored here in a little bug here. I need to change this all the time. Oops, save, yes. So this Max for Live device here basically translates the notes in the texts. So I have this added shape thing here. Oops, it's also not finished. Never finished anything. Sorry, I need to move this window around a little bit, which is difficult because the VGA cable is over the mouse pad here. So, and if I play clips now and turn on follow clip and actually change this here to a meaningful value first. So now you see that the text descriptions there are going through. So these are the text descriptions which I sent via Ethernet to the computers which have this shape generator which I showed you before. So that's what basically happens technically. And if you look at this here, all these knobs here are mapped to MIDI controllers and change aspects of the projection in real time. For instance, the color and the intensity and things like this. So that's basically how it is technically. And if I create a new piece of music for it, then I just add more clips and go through. So this is the rough order of my concert, but yesterday I was jumping a lot. I didn't play any of this stuff because I don't like it anymore. I played a little bit of this, and I jumped a lot back and forth in this one. And yeah, so that's how it's structured. And there's always, when I work on the pieces, it's always, I work on the visual shapes and on the sounds at the same time. What I did yesterday as a premiere was I made a recording of the whole set. So I didn't try it yet, but in theory, if I play all this back here, I should be able to have a perfect replication of what happened yesterday. And you know how it is with concerts. What sounds and feels good in a live situation, if you listen to it at home, maybe is complete nonsense. But at least I can try. So, save, don't save, so don't save. Yeah.
But maybe it's a stupid question. But you use only samples in the audio part and not generated, while the laser part is mass generated.
No,
I saw there is operator for the part that is the drone.
No, the laser sounds is
and the atmosphere. Then I saw Love was yesterday. I saw the word was typed. Maybe he was typing the letters that love dot, or is just a shape that is previously constructed.
Sorry, I'm not sure. The sound or the visual side?
Both. I was trying to understand if the visual side was really hard performed, and the audio side was...
I show it to you. Let me see how I can show it to you. Maybe
there is a lot of clip with audio, I saw, and that was all rhythmic, no?
Yes, I show you this part. I hope it works here, but
because it's often really difficult to create morphing on samples that fits the flow.
I show it to you. Let's see.
Maybe it's easier to just show it than it takes a while to load, unfortunately. This would be time for advertisement now. Buy Monolake Records. Okay. It's of course being a bit of a challenge without my faders, but I try. So let's see. Now comes the moment where the amplifier comes into the game. Perhaps not. So let's see, this is all off, that's good. So here's this bass drum, and this bass drum has a lot of controls. So this is usually all MIDI mapped, so I can do things like this, and so this is all things I do in real time. And yeah.
And this is also synthesis. Operator doing the theme. So, and these are the sounds which from the data I sent to the lasers. So what this here is it's a simple version of the laser pattern generator, which I use to create audio. And this, if I change the data for the lasers, it changes this too. So let me show you. I change here the speed of the lasers. Yeah, wrong pattern to show it. It's really fast and see it. So that's actually the sound of letters. This is the sound of the circle, I think. Maybe this one here. Yes, no, this is the line. This is the horizontal lines. Yeah, this is hard to edit now without. But this is basically the idea that for the 3 lasers, I have 3 sound generators, which are 100% in sync. And those sound generators, they don't get MIDI notes, they get also the text. So, I don't want to open this because it's a big mess, but basically they act like sound agents for the lasers. That sounds odd. But I think this is how it is. I'm not sure how to explain it further. So
basically, it's something that you don't hear, but controls the patterns of the lasers.
No, that's the other way around. It's exactly the other way around. This is the laser generator creates a sound, but just by accident.
Okay,
but the sound of the laser generator is sometimes it's really cool. Some shapes create great sounds. Other shapes create sounds which are really annoying. And in the first version, I simply used the laser sounds itself. And I found this, after a while, really tiring. So I create something which is a small abstraction of the real thing. It's almost like the laser sounds, but with a slightly different color. So the idea is, if I do something with the lasers which sounds cool, I can use it, but I have the freedom to change it without changing the shape of the laser. Because what happened with laser generator sound was, I draw a shape which looks cool, but it sounds annoying. And then I change the drawing only because of the sound. And this is of course wrong, because I shouldn't do it. Or I make something which sounds good and looks boring only because it sounds good. So this contradiction I needed to solve, and I solved it by having this thing which is a laser control optimized for sound. It's a bit
strange, but
so you have to show the gap between sound and lasers.
Yes, pretty much. And I tried to find a compromise there. It might happen that in the if I think about this completely pre-produced version, that I completely get rid of this and just design, like film sound design the perfect sound for a specific shape with no sense of logic at all. You know, just if I think in one piece that the growing circle needs to make then I just do it, and if in the next piece the growing circle does then I do it. Maybe afterwards it turns out that this is much better, or afterwards it turns out that the other version is so much better that spending all this time for this was stupid. I don't know yet. The big challenge, if you're in a position like mine who can actually program this, is that sometimes I'm getting really frustrated because I spend weeks and weeks programming and I don't know if it really will make sense at the end. So some of the things I did in the past made sense. And I thought, okay, I spent a lot of time, like for the mono deck. If you asked me if it was necessary to do this for half a year, I would say yes. There's other things. I built a very complex synthesizer in Max for Life, which I never made public and which I never finished. That's 3 months of work for nothing. But
I don't know before I do it. Yeah? So, and I kind of have to do it. Something is on my shoulder saying, Robert, you want this? No, actually, you want to lay in the sun. No, you want to go home and code. Yeah. Well, if you're now completely overwhelmed, exhausted, then I would say it's time for an espresso. Or do you have more questions or comments or?
Maybe I think it's difficult. Yesterday, seeing your show, I liked very much the music, but sometimes my attention was fully on the laser show. It's difficult to balance these two things.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. I'm for the attention of the one who come and see your work too, maybe. I heard a lot of talking about the visuals, but few of the people I talked to spoke about the music.
Which makes sense to me, because in the current state, much more energy went into figuring out what to do visually.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, maybe it's just some spots, some place, rooms are better for visual and less better for audio, maybe, and it's difficult to mix the two, and so the one came over the other part.
it's a very interesting problem.
One possible way for me to solve this in the future is that I can see parts of Lumiere where a lot of interesting sonic things go on with very slow changes in the visual side. So that what happens visually is very very intricate, very small, not very demanding, and the whole focus is on the sonic development, and then there's parts where it's shifted. This is something I would really like to do, but this is something which the current setup just technically doesn't allow. This is exactly for why I want to do a show where I have the ability to pre-program things, where I can say, okay, there's a shape where every movement is planned, and it's slow, and it's more like a sculpture than a movie. And you watch the shape slowly changing in an interesting way, and you can completely focus on the sound for 10, 15 minutes. And then I go back to something moving really fast. This is where I see Lumiere in I don't know, whenever I'm ready. So that it's really like in a movie where you have parts which are fast and action, and then if you're at the edge of being oversaturated, it falls down, and then you focus on something else, and then your focus moves. I plan to work on Lumiere for the next 5 years.
That's where you are now.
Exactly, yeah. But I completely agree with your comments here. It's one of the things which also occupies my thought. What is the relationship between sound and visuals there? But I don't know. It's the first time that I do it, and so I'm learning. No, that's an interesting side effect, yeah. But this is a very expensive copy protection. Okay, well, then.
I think it's the main thing that I noticed is that people looked at what happened in an alternative way to what looked at the electronic music show yesterday, because I think most of all the people who hear the evening go to clapping or music show listen to the music and then look at something that should interact with what we hear, but with a secondary point. And the main audio is something that is produced, not generated or real time. So there is always the statement you are a DJ and this is a project, a project for visual. Yesterday, I think many people understood that there was something more complex, more interesting, and more advanced than always DJing, always listen to DJ, or to listen to finished track, but listen to something evolving and to new sounds, a new concept of composing and performing. That's for me is the real value for the people.
Well, I mean, if this is the perception, then I'm the happiest person on this planet. If people perceive it like this, because this is the biggest compliment I can get from my work. If I put myself in the position of someone who is a critical person in the audience looking at my own work, what I like on it at the current state is that I strongly believe I do something with lasers which people have not seen before. This type of visuals with this context in such spaces is new. And for me, this is already very satisfying. I like parts of the sound. It would be strange if I wouldn't. So, from an audience perspective, if something sounds interesting and has power and a nice texture, then it's great too. And my objections at some point is that the overall structure could be improved, and that's exactly this point with relationship visual sound. In general, what I want to experience if I go to a concert or to a movie or to whatever kind of art event I watch is, I want to see something which is in some way surprising. I'm not looking for perfection. Perfection is not the most important value for me. Surprise is a value for me, and the feeling of community is also very important. And for instance, the feeling of community is something which a good DJ can provide. For me, the amazing part of a good DJ set is that the person selecting the records manages to take the audience on a trip. And it doesn't matter if this is trance, house, minimal techno, dubstep, whatever. This is just a question of taste. But the question of the quality is something happen where if I'm in there, I feel it has something to do with my presence in this place at this moment. And if this is not the case, then I'm usually then it's usually not so satisfying. And so surprise is a moment which, for me, is very valuable, because surprise also means something happens which changes my idea how things have to be. What I find difficult is when I go somewhere and everything is perfect, but I know exactly what comes next, and then it happens. And it can be really good. It can be really, really good music, or really good art, or a really good movie. But if you all the time feel you are already 2 minutes ahead of what's going on, you're losing interest. And so I, from myself, made the decision, I'd rather make mistakes on stage and share those mistakes with the audience than having the perfect show where everyone says, yeah, it was nice. I'd rather have people saying, well, the second part really was bad, but in the first part it was amazing. I said, yes, I know. That's how I want to interact. And well, this can go wrong and this can go right. Yesterday was, in my opinion, the best Lumiere show I ever played. It was number 14. The worst Lumiere show I ever played, with the same set, nothing changed, almost nothing changed, was the concert before Nantes in France. I felt so bad afterwards that I was close to cry, because it was just not working for me. I didn't feel it. I played it and I thought every second, I'm sick of this circle, I'm sick of this square, I'm sick of this sound. I don't want to see it, I don't want to hear it. It's bullshit, it makes no sense whatsoever. I was completely frustrated. And I believe the audience kind of sensed this, so the overall perception of the concert was it was okay. But that's the risk I take in order to have those moments like yesterday. There was one moment which I love especially, where I noticed people were happy and shouting, and I just changed the timbre of the sound to get a little bit more massive, to basically to have this acoustic way of waving back to the audience, say, I'm listening to you, I notice you notice, I show you that I notice that you notice. You know, this is a way of interaction which is so beautiful. This is what for me the magic of live performance is. Theater is the same thing. You have really excellent theater actors, and they go on stage and they play the same piece forever and ever. And the guy comes on stage, says his sentence, and then someone in the audience is laughing, and he's just stopping for a second, continuing with the sentence. And everyone in the audience knows he was noticed the guy who was laughing, and zack, there it is. The audience and the actor is there, and you're quiet and you watch. And this is great. This gives me goosebumps. This is how it has to be. Okay, I'm getting excited here. Yeah. Well,
thank you.
Do you have a message in the show behind geometrical forms or words, numbers?
No.
Or only performance?
I think I'm a message skeptical person. My message is the world of perception is exciting, and if you just look around and listen, you will discover new things every day. And if you manage to be open to your senses, it changes the way you interact with people. And this changes the way you act as a social person, and this changes politics and changes everything. So my message is, look out there and let the outside come in, instead of having your perception of what it is. If you come to my concert and says, this is not a proper DJ set, this is pretty close to political fascism. This is exactly the same thing. It's, I don't care about your opinion, I have an idea. So my message is, open your senses and be aware of what's going on at the outside. Be aware of the fact that things can be beautiful, things can be problematic, that a detail happening in the background is essential. This is something which is essential for perception of art, but it is equally or more essential in your daily life. If you are aware of what's going on in your environment, you might be the person who is there to say to someone, hey, you can't do it like this. Or you are there to help someone, or whatever. So I don't think I need a more message than that. Because two basic messages also can be seen as a bit patronizing. Love code is, of course, also a message, but this is so sweet. that no one can actually consider this as a. It's too sweet to be very important. You know, if I would say love, peace, unity, or peace for the world, of course peace for the world. What else? So why do people have wars? It's complicated, and I don't want to have a simple message because I don't believe in simple messages anymore.
In some parts of the show, some points suggest to me some sensation between sounds and the laser to make image something. I think is similar to nothing. Is a very good show because it's a contemporary art show.
That's how I see it. Yeah. Well,
It's totally different to static DJing or visual show because it's in some parts I think is very random. You modify all the parameters. Sorry.
I know I'm fighting with this word too.
And sounds. In fact, I would to ask if for example, in a columns, do you draw or play random some MIDI notes to modify the sound, or are static clips?
There is, for instance, I don't know if I find it now. Well, I don't find the right clip, but for instance, what I sometimes do is I just what's going on here? It's a wrong button. Let's just show this one here. So I draw envelopes, but I change the length of the envelope so that they are not repeating exactly. So I can't predict 100% what's going on. I do simple things which create more complexity than I understand. And this forces me to react then again. It's not exactly random, but it's a complexity which is it's a little bit like juggling balls. I do things which you understand the principle, but you still have to watch all the time. And sometimes it fails. So I use those tricks to create things. Or if I change the speed of the movement, then sometimes things become static again because of some moiré effect. And I like to work with those. And sometimes this works extremely well. The speed and the moiré and the after images, and sometimes I just don't get there. And the computer is my play partner. So that's how I see it. Is this clear?
I'm not a good player for keyboards, and for example, in some parts of Alive, I play with scale in minor or major. I would to ask if you use something else.
I do a lot of tricks to avoid that I play the wrong things. I make sure that there are situations where I avoid doing wrong things. But then again, if you do something which is wrong, just do it again and again. And at some point people will accept it right. So, I think this was a great last statement. If you do something wrong, do it again and again, and people think it's right. Thank you very much for listening to me, and enjoy the rest of your day. And Siena is fantastic. It's great here.
background.